This video is brought to you by The History Speaks. The United States has long been referred to as the land of opportunity, and for good reason. It has served as a beacon of democracy, a symbol of freedom, and an example of individual achievement. People from all over the world have looked to America as a place where dreams can come true, and where anyone, regardless of their background, can rise to greatness. However, the United States is far from free of controversy and dark chapters in its past. Alongside its achievements and ideals, there are many complex and painful aspects of American history that cannot be ignored. From the horrors of colonialism, the brutal institution of slavery, the Jim Crow laws that enforced racial segregation, to the long and ongoing struggle for civil rights in the 1960s and beyond, it is clear that the image of America as a shining city on a hill has often been a far cry from reality. Despite these struggles, the American spirit of resilience, the pursuit of the American dream, and the country's role as an innovator and pioneer have remained powerful forces in its story. Symbols like the Statue of Liberty, Mount Rushmore, and the Lincoln Memorial stand as testaments to the enduring ideals of freedom and democracy, even if those ideals were not always realized for all of its people. The United States was born out of revolution, a fight for independence that forever changed the course of history. In its relatively short history of just over 240 years, the country has experienced incredible highs, achievements that have advanced humanity in countless ways, but also some devastating lows that have left scars on its national psyche. The United States is a melting pot of people, cultures, and ideas, and while this diversity has often been its greatest strength, it has also led to social unrest, tension, and conflict. For many years, American school children were taught a simple, triumphant story about the discovery of America. They were told that in 1492, Christopher Columbus bravely sailed across the ocean and discovered a new world. Yet when Columbus arrived in the Caribbean, people had already been living in the Americas for thousands of years. Both North and South America were home to ancient, complex civilizations and cultures that had developed long before European contact. Indigenous peoples had built rich societies with their own languages, religions, and traditions. Yet the arrival of Europeans would soon disrupt these civilizations in profound and often violent ways. Anthropologists now believe that the first humans arrived in the Americas by crossing a land bridge at the Bering Strait during the last ice age. From there, their descendants spread across the Western Hemisphere, developing a variety of distinct cultures and societies. In South America, the mighty Inca Empire and other great civilizations flourished, while in Mesoamerica, the Maya and Aztec built thriving cities with advanced knowledge of astronomy, agriculture, and engineering. In North America, Native American tribes developed rich cultural traditions and social structures. Despite the popular narrative, Columbus wasn't even the first European to set foot in the New World. Norse explorers, including the famous Viking Leif Erikson, had established settlements in Greenland and present-day Canada centuries before Columbus's arrival. As tales of the New World's riches spread across Europe, they ignited a frenzy of exploration and colonization. While many stories about cities made of gold were exaggerated, the promise of new resources and wealth lured adventurers from countries such as Spain, England, Italy, France, and Portugal. These European powers sought to stake their claim to vast new lands, and so began the great age of colonization in the Americas. The English in particular made several attempts to establish permanent colonies. One of the earliest, in 1587, was the ill-fated Roanoke colony in what is now Virginia. More than 100 men, women, and children arrived to settle there, but when their leader John White returned from a supply mission to England, the entire colony had mysteriously disappeared. The fate of the Roanoke settlers remains a mystery to this day. Undeterred by the failure of Roanoke, the English continued their efforts to colonize North America. In 1604, the Jamestown colony was successfully established in what is now Virginia, opening the floodgates for further European colonization. The vast and seemingly unspoiled land of North America offered opportunities for those seeking adventure, escape from economic hardship, or freedom from religious persecution. One well-known example is the Pilgrims who landed at Plymouth Rock in 1620, fleeing religious oppression in England. Others, particularly second and third-born sons, saw the New World as their only chance to own land. as England's practice of primogeniture meant that only firstborn sons could inherit their family estates. By the mid-1700s, European colonies dotted the east coast of North America, and tensions were beginning to rise between these colonies and their European rulers. A bold young landowner from Virginia, George Washington, rose to prominence as a military leader during the French and Indian War, which lasted from 1754 to 1763. This conflict, which pitted the English colonies against the French and their Native American allies, served as a precursor to the American Revolution. As the colonies grew more self-sufficient and organized, they began to chafe under British rule, particularly when it came to taxation without representation. The colonies were expected to contribute taxes to the British Crown, yet they had no voice in British government. When the Revolutionary War broke out, George Washington was appointed to command the Continental Army. In 1776, the colonies boldly declared their independence from Britain, yet achieving independence was only the first step. It took years of debate and negotiation to lay the foundations of a new democratic government. The United States Constitution was ratified on September 17, 1787, establishing the framework for the young nation. Washington was elected as the country's first president, and under his leadership, the new United States began to settle into a fragile peace. However, tensions with Britain flared again during the War of 1812. The British, eager to limit U.S. expansion and control trade, clashed once more with their former colonies. After the war, relations between the United States and Britain improved, eventually transforming into a lasting alliance. Yet, as the 19th century unfolded, the United States was marked by the mistreatment of minorities and violent conflicts with Native American tribes. President Andrew Jackson, a controversial figure, spearheaded efforts to relocate Native Americans from their ancestral lands, arguing that white Americans had a greater right to the fertile farmland. This culminated in the Indian Removal Act of 1830 and the devastating Trail of Tears, where over 60,000 Native Americans were forcibly marched westward, with thousands perishing along the way. While Native Americans suffered displacement and death, African slaves endured brutal conditions in the southern United States. The slave trade was a booming business until Congress passed an act in 1808 that outlawed the importation of slaves. However, this law did not end the institution of slavery itself, and millions of African Americans continued to be enslaved in the South. Slavery became the central issue that divided the United States, as the industrial North began to question its morality. This division led to the outbreak of the Civil War in 1861, a bloody conflict in which Americans fought against Americans. The Civil War claimed an astounding 750,000 lives, more than all other U.S. military deaths combined until the Vietnam War. It ended in 1865 with the surrender of Confederate General Robert E. Lee to Union General Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse. The fall of the Confederacy marked the end of slavery, but freedom did not equate to equality for African Americans. The decades following the war saw great progress in American society with groundbreaking inventions, but discrimination against minorities persisted. As the United States grew into a global superpower in the 20th century, it experienced both progress and repression. The Great Depression and the environmental catastrophe of the Dust Bowl hit the nation hard in the 1930s. Programs like Social Security were introduced to aid recovery. But the U.S. was soon drawn into World War II following Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941. The war ended, with the U.S. dropping atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, marking a turning point in world history. The decades after World War II saw the United States emerge as a dominant global power, yet internal struggles persisted. The civil rights movement of the 1960s brought issues of racial inequality to the forefront once again. The assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and other leaders was a tragic reminder of the ongoing fight for justice. Then, in 2001, the United States was hit by a devastating terrorist attack on its own soil. The September 11th attacks profoundly altered the country's sense of security and led to a new kind of warfare, one against global terrorism. In the years since, the United States has faced political, social, and economic challenges. But through it all, The resilience and determination of its people have kept the nation moving forward. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more content on American history and beyond.